little yellow hat. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hi everyone. So today we're going to explain about the story No Witchcraft for Sale by Doris. Before I'm going to tell you the story itself, let me introduce myself first. My name is Alya Izwandi and my NPM 107 and I'm from 3C. So let's get started. So before I'm going to explain the story details, I'm going to introduce to you about the character from the story. We have Farquhar family, which is Mr. and Mrs. Farquhar. Teddy when he was a little, Gideon the cook or sieve. Teddy when he was a little bit more having old, and also the Mrs. Farquhar itself. So the Farquhar had been childless for years when little Teddy was born, and they were touched by the pleasure of their servant, who brought the present of fowls and eggs and flowers to homestead when they come to rejoice over the baby. Exclaiming the delight over his downy golden head and his blue eyes, they also congratulated Mrs. Farquhar as if she had achieved a very great thing, and she felt that she had. Her smile for the lingering and marionettes was warm and grateful. Later, when Teddy had his first haircut, Gideon, the cook, picked up the soft gold tooths from the ground and held them reverently in his hand. Then he smiled at the little boy and said, "Little yellow head." That became the native name for the child. Gideon and Teddy were great friends from the first. When Gideon had finished his work, he would lift Teddy on his shoulder to the shade of a big tree and play with him there, forming curious little toys from twigs and leaves and grass, or shaping animals from wetted soil. When Teddy learned to walk, it was often Gideon who crawled before him, clucking encouragement, and finally, Teddy can catching him when he fell. Tossing him up in the air, they both became breathless with laughter. Mrs. Farquhar was fond. Mrs. Farquhar was fond of the old cook because of his love for her child. There was no second baby, and one day, Gideon said, "Oh, Mrs., the Lord above sent this one. Little yellowhead is the most good thing we have in our house. Because of that, Mrs. Farquhar, felt a warm impulse toward her cook, and at the end of the month, she raised his wages, and he had been with her now for several years. He was one of the few natives who had his wife and children in the compound and never wanted to go home to his kraal, which was some hundreds of miles away. Sometimes a small pecan who had been born the same time as Teddy could be seen peering from the edge of the bush, staring in awe at the little white boy with his miraculous fair hair and northern blue eyes itself. The two little children who would gaze at each other with a wide interest gaze, and once Teddy put out his hand quickly and touched the blood-cheeked cheeks and hair. Gideon, who was watching, shook his head wonderingly and said, "Oh, Mrs., these are both children, and one will grow up to be a boss, and one will be a servant." And Mrs. Farquhar smiled and said sadly, "Yes, Gideon, I was thinking the same." She sighed. "It is God's will," said Gideon, who was mission boy. The Farquhar were really religious people, and this shared feeling about God bound servant and master even closer together. Teddy was about 6 years old when he was given a scooter and discovered the intoxication of speed. All day he would fly around the homestead in and out flower beds, scattering squawking chickens and irritated dogs, finishing with a wide dizzying arch into the kitchen door. Then there he would cry, Eden, look at me. And Gideon would laugh, say, very clever, little yellow hat. Gideon Young would say, who was now Hert's boy, came especially up from the compound to see Scooter. He was afraid to come near it, but Teddy showed up in front of him. Beckoning, shout Teddy, get out of my way. And he raced in circles around the black child until he was frightened and fled to the bush. Why did you frighten him? Asked Gideon, gravely approachful. He's only a black boy and laughed. Then, when Gideon turned away from him without speaking, his face fell. Very soon he slipped into the house and found Orange and brought it Gideon, saying, this is for you. He could not bring himself in to say he was sorry, but he could not bear lose Gideon's affection either. Also, now Gideon would not let his flesh touch of flesh white child. He was kind, but there was a grave formality in his voice that made Teddy pout and sulk away. Also, it made him into a man. But on the one day, Teddy came staggering into the kitchen with his fist to his eye, shrieking with pain. Gideon dropped the pot of full of hot soup, and he was holding, rushed to the child, first aside his fingers. A snake! He exclaimed. Teddy had been on his scooter, and he came to race with his foot the side of the big tub of beans. Mrs. Farquhar lifted the child into the house and bathed his eyes for McGinnis. She had scarcely heard Gideon's word, but when she saw that her remedies had no effect at all, and remember how she had seen natives with no sight in their eyes because of spitting of snakes, she began to look for the return of her cook. Do not be afraid, Missus, said Gideon. This will cool little yellow hat's eyes. He stripped the leaves from the plant. Now, when such a thing happens on a farm, it cannot be long before everyone hears of it. Mr. and Mrs. Farquhar told their neighbors, and the story was discussed from one end of the district to the other. The bush is full of secrets. No one can live in Africa, or at least on the veldt, without learning very soon. And there is an ancient wisdom of leaf and soil season. And two, perhaps most important of all, of the darker tracts of the human mind, which is the black man's heritage. Up and down, the district people were telling anecdotes, reminding each other of the things happened to them. Mr. and Mrs. Farquhar were flustered and pleased, also flattered. They asked the scientist to lunch. They told the story all over again. For the 100th time, little Teddy was there too, his blue eyes sparkling with health to prove the truth of it. Eventually, when the meal was over, the Farquhar called Gideon into their living room and explained to him that it was. Here was a big doctor from the big city, and he had come all the way to see Gideon. Gideon looked from Mr. Farquhar to Mr. Farquhar, and then at the little boy who was showing great importance because of the occasion. At last he said grudgingly, the big was want to know what medicine I use. He spoke impetuously as if he could not believe his friends could so betray him. Mr. Farquhar began explaining how useful medicine could be made out of the root, and how it could be put on sale, and how thousands of people black and white up and down the continent of Africa could be saved by the medicine. when the spitting snake filled their eyes with poison. There was silence after their further explanation, and then Gideon remarked indifferently that he could not remember the route. His face was sullen and hostile even when he looked at Farquhar, whom he usually treated like old friends. They were beginning to feel annoyed, and this feeling annoyed the guilty that had been sprung into life by Gideon's accusing manner. If Farquhar might treat on that plan 50 times, and they passed from house to garden, from cow crawl to Mellyville, but they would never know it. From time to time, remember that one on the day the snake had taken 10 minutes to find the route. Someone asked, "Is it much farther, Gideon?" And Gideon would answer over his shoulder with angry politeness, "I'm looking for the route, boss." And indeed, he would frequently bend sideways, trail his hand among the grass, and with a gesture that was insulting in its perfunctoriness, he walked them through the vast along unknown path for 2 hours. In that melting desert head, so that the sweat trickled coldly down them and their heads arched. The Farquhars made inquiries about the route from the laborers. Sometimes they were answered with the disdainful stare. Sometimes the natives said, "We do not know. We have never heard of the route." One, the cattle boy, who had with them a long time, had grown to trust them a little, asked your boy in the kitchen, "Now there is a doctor for you. He's the son of famous medicine who used to be in this part, and there's nothing he cannot be cured." Then he added politely, "Of course, he is not as good as the white man doctor. We know that, but he good for us." After some time, when the soreness had gone from between Farquhar and Gideon, they began to joke. "When are you going to show us the snake route, Gideon?" And he would laugh, shake his head, saying a little comfortably, "But I did show you, Mrs. Have you forgotten?" And Gideon would double up with a polite laughter. After much laughing, he would suddenly straighten himself, wipe his old eyes, and look sadly at Teddy, who was screaming Mrs. Billy at him across the kitchen. "Oh, little yellowhead, how you have grown! Soon you will be grown up with a farm of your own." So that's all the story about No Witchcraft for sale by Doris Lessing. I think that's all, everyone. Thank you so much. Bye. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.